Hannah Murray, TRE in the afternoon.
Good afternoon. Joining us on the line now is Karen Palmer. She's an author whose book, She's Under Here, grew out of her award-winning essay, The Reader is the Protagonist. It's an honest and poignant memoir that reflects on her escape from a violent marriage and what it cost to protect her and her family's safety. Welcome to the show, Karen.
Hi, Hannah. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. So first of all, I'm really sorry to hear what happened to you. It must have been a really horrendous time and quite a difficult book to write and look back on these times.
Yes. But fortunately, by this time, the story is 35 years old. So looking back on it was not as painful as it seems like it might be, because so much time has passed and I was able to look at the things that happened almost as if they happened to somebody else.
Like just a totally different chapter of your life.
Right. And it went on for a certain amount of time. I don't know if you want me to say a little bit about what the story is about.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah, it's my second husband and I and my two young daughters left California to get away from my violent ex-husband. And we didn't just leave, we changed our identities. So we went to a state where we had never lived, where we didn't know anybody. We had money in a sack. And we had a change of clothes and we had a little bit of kitchenware. And we just landed in this town, Boulder, Colorado, with no sense of how we were going to present ourselves out in the world as completely new people.
Wow. And what made you decide to do that? What was the situation that made you need to do that?
My ex-husband was a very serious alcoholic and a drug abuser. And he, during the course of my relationship with him, which was over 14 years, about 7 of those were married, but we lived together for several years. So it was like being married. He gradually became more paranoid, more controlling, more violent, more irrational. And at the time when I finally decided to divorce him and get out of the marriage, he went completely off the rails. And during that period of time, he stalked me and threatened me. He threatened the man who is now my husband that he would kill us, that he would kill the children, that he would take the children. And he did, in fact, kidnap our younger daughter, who was 3 at the time, and had her for 9 days before I was able to get her back.
Oh, my goodness. That must have been horrendous. So what was the situation when you got her back? I mean, she was 3. Did you know if she remembers much about it?
She does not remember much about it. It's interesting. The older girl, who was 7 at the time this happened, remembers quite a bit of what our family life was like. And she remembers her father, but the little one doesn't really remember, although he had her for this period of 9 days during which, the police really didn't do anything to help me find them because my divorce wasn't final and custody hadn't been settled yet. So the attitude was, well, he has as much right to them as you do, and there's nothing you can do. So the only reason I was able to get any traction at all was because he had an outstanding warrant for an arrest for a drunk driving charge where he hadn't showed up in court. And that allowed me to get emergency custody so that then I could try to get my daughter back.
Okay. And presumably, hopefully, he didn't harm her in that time that he had her.
He didn't harm her, but it's interesting. It took all that time, those 9 days, before he finally called me with an ultimatum to give her back. And the ultimatum was that I had to stop seeing the man that is now my husband. Otherwise, he wouldn't return her. And of course, I agreed to that, even though I really didn't have any intention of honoring the promise because it was crazy. It was a very, it wasn't a thing that he had the right to request of me at that point. So I was willing to say anything, but he had her and he couldn't really take care of her. When he called, he put her on the phone for just a couple of minutes. And one of the first things she said to me was, "Daddy gives me beer."
What?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
He may have been giving her beer to keep her quiet. He was living in a motel during this period of time. And I think initially he told me initially, she went kind of nuts. She was crying for mommy and she wanted to go home. But one of the things he told me that was so hard was he said, "She's forgotten you now." Oh. She's just a little tiny thing and she doesn't ask for you anymore.
That's
so,
horrible.
So he didn't harm her physically. He wasn't abusing her sexually or physically, but the emotional abuse was there, even in a little one.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you and your second husband decided to leave and change your identity, did you tell anyone? Could you tell anyone, or was it just literally the two of you and your girls?
Initially, it was just the two of us. We didn't tell anyone for several years. I would call my mother from a phone booth and have, conversations with her about the girls or about our life without telling her where we were living. And in order to assume these new identities, I had a background in graphic design, and I forged documents. I forged birth certificates for us, so that we could go to Social Security and get new numbers. And we weren't traceable. There are things that people do sometimes when they move away and they think they're changing their identity. They change their name, but their social security number follows them around. And people even often do things like try to transfer their magazine subscriptions. I spoke to a private investigator once and asked him, "How do you find people?" And he said, "Often because of things like that." And most people are not comfortable or able to cut off contact with people. And we just really felt we had no choice. Yeah. We had each other. So we were in a better position than, a woman who is in a domestic violence situation and needs to get away, and she is all alone. So I did have a husband at this point and my kids. So even though I was afraid all the time, I still felt like I had everything that was important to me I could hold close.
Yeah. So when you moved away and started this new life, at what point did you start to relax, and did life start to become normal and you started to tell people the situation and all of that?
It never felt normal. I spent 20 years being afraid. I was always afraid that he would catch up to us. And he was such an angry person and vengeful that I knew something really horrible would happen if he caught up to us. That said, we did go on to have a normal life. We had jobs and the kids were in school and we made friends eventually. So on the surface, it was normal, but there was always this nagging thing in the back of our minds that we were not done with him.
So what changed? Did something happen?
Yes. Eventually, I learned that he had died. And once I knew that, then we were really 100% safe. We still had to go through this whole rigmarole to get our identity straightened out, because by that time we had lived 20 years as other people. And
so you've gone back to your original identity?
Well, we went back to our original Social Security numbers, but we kept our new names because by that time it had been 20 years and we were known professionally as those people. Within the family, we called ourselves our name. It's in the book, so I'm not saying anything that isn't out there. But the name I took, Karen, which if I'd known back in 1989 that Karen was going to be the most hated woman in the world, I wouldn't have picked it. But it was close to my real name, which is Carrie.
Okay.
And that way my husband could still call me Carrie, and we could say it was a nickname.
Oh, nice.
So we were able to hang on to pieces of our identity. He switched his first name and his middle name so that I could still call him Vinny. But out in the world, he was John. And we were trying to put as much distance between our old selves and our new selves as we could.
Mm. And how old are the children now? How much of all this do they now understand?
Well, they understood a lot of it from the get-go, especially the older one. And they're 44 and almost 40 now. So they are fully grown women. Mm-hmm. Our older daughter has 3 children. She has 3 boys, and she has a fairly public life in Washington, D.C. She's an attorney there, and she did public service. She was an elected official for some time. So they're out in the world and they're good, but they also have this trauma in their background. So it is always something to consider. I don't think you ever get over this completely, but you're able to move on for it and create a life.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I have to say, so brave of you to do what you did, to be able to escape like that. You know, we think of the idea of running away, that somehow that's a negative thing that shows weakness or something. But in your case, absolutely not. It's the opposite. I think it shows immense strength to do what you did.
There are still, the support of law enforcement and the legal establishment for women in these situations has changed somewhat. You can now go to the IRS and they will give you another number. They will hide you.
Right.
But that was not available at the time that I did this. So yet in spite of all that, there are still every day 3 women are killed by their partners. Mm-hmm. It has not changed enough. And again, the legal system and law enforcement don't always take it as seriously as they should. And you hear about some woman having a protective order against her husband or her ex-husband, and she'll say, he really is going to harm me or the children or, extended family. And the attitude is often, call us when he gets there, which means when it's too late.
Yeah.
So we did what we had to do. It was a very painful thing to do because taking a man's children away is no small thing. And I did love the man once, and they were his children. But I did what I felt I had to do to protect all of us.
Yeah. And
in spite of how hard it was and, the various repercussions over the years, I would do the same thing presented with that again.
I'm interested to know what you think the possible solution is for the authorities. If there are restraining orders out there and the woman is saying, I'm fearing for my life or my children's life, what do you think should happen? I'm not sure what the possible solution could be.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I think, the first solution is believe the woman, or in some cases the man, when they come to you and say what the situation is. There's certain personalities. I think now that my ex-husband was a high-functioning sociopath, where if things in his life were going well, he presented as normal. A lot of people really liked him. He was very charismatic and he was a lot of fun. But if things started to not go his way, then these other parts of his personality came to the fore. And he was not afraid of law enforcement, ever. So he was the type of personality that getting a restraining order would only have inflamed him. And it would have made things worse. And this does happen for some women where they're afraid to bring the law into it because the man is that type of personality. That said, there is this whole swath of abusers that can perhaps with counseling, with working within the family, with social workers, and, trying to nip some of this stuff in the bud before it gets to the stage where the woman is really in fear of her life and the man is so consumed with his jealousy and anger that he will harm her or the kids in order to satisfy his need for revenge.
It's just awful. Unfortunately, can be a bit of an issue in Spain, domestic violence, and we've had a situation literally a couple of days ago where a 33-year-old British woman, mother of 3 children, was murdered by her ex-partner.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, so the whole community is mourning and, trying to work out how people are obviously wanting to help the children. And, she's lost the 3 children have lost both of their parents. He went straight to prison and told them, confessed what he did, and has obviously gone straight to prison. So they've lost their mother and their father, both like that.
Terrible. Yeah, that was another reason why we ran, is we felt that whatever actually happened when this thing came to a boil, what it would do to the children was impossible to reconcile with having them have any kind of normal emotional life. Like those poor kids you're talking about, I hope they have extended family. I hope they have help, because that's just a devastating story. And it happens more than we're aware of. And I honestly don't really know what can be done. No. Again, a certain personality. I watched a documentary once in which was about these men who stalk and threaten their lives. And they talked to this one man who was in prison for killing his wife. And you would think that having gone to prison, going to be there for a long time, that he would show some remorse. And he said, "I'm glad I did it."
Wow.
Because it gave him peace to do it. So I don't know what you do. I don't know what you do.
No, I mean, that's why it's so fascinating. I guess we're fascinated as humans in understanding the criminal mind, all these TV programs, documentaries, true crime, all this kind of thing, because we want to understand what goes on in the mind of a killer, for example. And it is so difficult to understand, particularly when there's children involved. The idea of harming children or harming the parent of children and the long-term effect that has on everybody involved. It's really difficult to understand how and why someone would be so careless, so thoughtless, have no, repercussions in their heads of the devastating impact of what they're doing. It's very difficult to understand, isn't it?
Yes. And there are some good books written about it. Rachel Louise Snyder, I don't know if the book, it's probably available in the UK and in Europe, called No Visible Bruises, which is about different programs about how you deal with men that have this violent impulse, and different pilot programs and the success or failure of them. It's like people are trying to find a solution, and it's just very hard because the psychology of such a person is impossible to imagine. The one thing I just wanted to have a normal divorce. It's very sad. People get divorced. Yeah. It's sad. But to have it turn into this life and death trauma for everybody, it was so unnecessary. It was so unnecessary. And it ruined his life. Eventually we were okay. We had each other, and we raised the girls, and they're really wonderful women now. But his life was ruined. So again, it's hard to imagine what makes a person go down that path.
Yeah. Well, well done for writing the book. I know your hope is that it will help anyone else in a similar situation to understand that they're not alone and there are possible ways out, because that's the big thing, isn't it? That feeling of being trapped and that there's absolutely nothing that you can do about your situation. And there always is. People, especially now compared to when you did it, there is a lot more help out there.
Yes, and back when I did it too, people, I didn't know anybody who was in a domestic violence situation, which does not mean that people I knew were not in that situation, just that I didn't know. Yeah. So I never went to a shelter. I never talked to anybody. I didn't talk, to a priest. I didn't even tell my mother until everything fell completely apart. So the main thing I would hope for other women is to look for the helpers. There are people who have gone through this, and we can sense one another. And if you open yourself up to it, instead of feeling self-protective or ashamed or all those emotions that come into it, then you have a better chance of getting out and a better chance for a better outcome for your children and even for the abuser. Yeah. If there is some kind of intervention early enough before things get out of hand.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, the book is called She's Under Here, excuse me, a love story, a horror story, a reckoning. And it's available from all the usual outlets, wherever you buy your books from. And it's by Karen Palmer, who we've been chatting with today. Karen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.